Dear family, and the friends, we're here today to remember and also celebrate the life of our dear Chaim Hirsch ben Dovber, our dear Harvey Saltzman, who passed away this past Sunday on the 14th day of Shvat, February 9th of 2020. We'll start today's service. I'll recite the words of King David from the book of Psalms, the book of Tehillim, some in Hebrew, some in English. As is in this time of struggle and hardship, the words of the Tehillim, of the Psalms, bring us some comfort. I'll start with Tehillim 1, Psalm 1. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach ba'atzas r'shoyim u'v'derech hatayim lo amad u'v'moshev leitzim lo yashav Ki'im b'seiras adinei cheftzei, u'v'seirasa yega yemam v'layla. V'haya ke'et shasal al palge mayim, asher pirya yitim be'itay v'aleyu lo yibal, v'chala sheyasa yatzliach. Lo yechein harashayim, ki'im kamoitz asher tidevenu ruach, al kein lo yakumu rashayim ba'mishpat v'chatayim ba'adas tzadikim, ki yedei adinei derech tzadikim v'derech rashayim teved. Happy is the one who has not followed the counsel of the wicked, nor stood in the path of the sinners, nor sat in the company of the scornful. Rather, that one's delight is in the Torah of the Lord, meditating in God's Torah day and night. I'll be like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose leaf will not wither, and whatever that one does prospers. Not so the wicked, who are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked shall not survive judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord loves the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is doomed. Psalm 15, Mizmor LeDavid, Adinoi mi yagur ba'alecha, mi yishkoyim b'har kadshecha, herlech tamim b'fayel tzedek, v'devar emes b'levavai, le'ragal al ha'shenai, le'asa le'rei yura, v'cherpa le'nasa al krevai, nivzeh be'emes nimas, v'es yirei Adinoi yichabed, nishbar lahara v'le'yomer, kasper le'nasa b'neshach, b'shechel al naki, le'lakach, eisa ele le'yimet la'ilam. A song of David, Lord, who may sojourn in your tent? Who may dwell on your holy mountain? One who walks in purity, does what is righteous, and speaks truth from the heart. Who has no slander on the tongue, nor has done harm to a fellow, nor cast disgrace towards a neighbor. In whose eyes a contemptible person is repulsive, but whose honor those who are in awe of the Lord. Who swear truthfully even to personal hurt, and never retracts. Who does not lend money on interest, nor takes bribe against the innocent. One who does these shall never falter. And I read Psalm 15, I think so much of Harvey, a man of his word, a man of principle, a man who will do anything for another. But read Psalm 23, you have it in your books as well, in your papers as well. I'll read it in its Hebrew, then in its translation. Mizmor LeDavid, Adinoi roi lo yechsa bin desha yar bitzeni, al mei menuches yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshev yancheni b'malgei tzedek leman shemoi, Gam ki elech begeitz al mavos le'irera ki ate imadi. Shiftacha umishantacha hemi yanachamuni. Tarech lefanai shocha neget tzererei. Dishanta v'shemen reisi kaisi revoyei. Ach tov v'chesed yudefunu koyim echaye. V'shafti bevesa dinoi la'erech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restored my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for the name's sake. Yea, though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I feel no evil, for you are with me. The rod and your staff, they would comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Only goodness and kindness shall follow me all the days of the life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Your rod and your staff. When God gives us a rod, gives us a pain, He also gives us a staff. Today, we'll hear from family and friends a little bit about Harvey and what is it that we're taking with us. But I wanted to take a moment to reflect a little bit of this giant of a man. Harvey, I think by extension, is one with Yeda, 67 years, plus many more before marriage. The dear father of Larry, who I spoke to for a long time last night on the phone, his wife Sharon, David, his wife Susan, and of course the late Bonnie, Diane, and father-in-law of Mitch. He's the proud grandfather Philip and Leah, Jennifer and Russell, Isaac and Talia, Max and Maria, Stanley and Sarah, Michael, Jeffrey, and Carly. Harvey took a lot of pride to tell me he has many great-grandchildren as well. Zahava, Meira, Adam, Bonnie, Eve, Mitch, Emily, Jonah, Bonnie, Malka, Morty, Aaron, Bonnie, Isabel, and of course the newest great-grandchildren just born recently, Lena and Ella, and the dear brother of Barry who we spoke about so fondly. Harvey was born on the 4th of Cheshvan, October 15, 1931. And I was thinking last night, and since Sunday, how could I get up here and speak about Harvey? I know him probably 12 years now, and I'm sure many of us in this room know him for many more. A giant of a man, how could you take a few minutes and try to reflect on such a person? How could you put in words such a giant? But I'm going to attempt to share some of my personal thoughts about his life and personality, how I saw it through my eyes. I spent many hours with Harvey, both in person and on the phone, and with his dear family. And if I would be asked to describe Harvey in one sentence, I would say he's hardworking, caring, loving person who will do anything for another. Many times I made the mistake of asking Harvey which university he went to. And he would always tell me clearly, I didn't go to university. I went to the University of Hard Knocks. I worked hard. And then also tell me why the youth of today might have to learn that as well, how to work hard. I first met Harvey and Yetta due to their daughter, Bonnie, of blessed memory. As director of Chabad at University of Illinois, I have many parents, prospective parents, reaching out and telling me they're coming to visit campus and, want to check it out. But I remember vividly when I got a phone call from a very energetic woman named Bonnie Dayan, and she shared with me that she's coming to campus with her son Max and a younger son Stanley as well, who was only in 9th grade then, but I guess came along, or 8th grade, came along for the ride. And she made it very clear to me. And she said, my kids are coming to Illinois in a couple of years. I want you to make sure when they get there, there's going to be Jewish life. I don't care what there's right now, but when they get there, it better be that way. And I want you to mentor my kids. And I still remember the picture in mind. She came, and I have this picture on the quad, and Max and Stanley running after her, and she's running on the quad. When Max came to campus and became part of our family, I felt like the Saltzman family became our family. Those are very tough weeks. I was only a month into school when Barney passed away. And through knowing Max, and then the expanded relationship with Mitch, and then Stanley and Isaac, I came to meet Harvey and Yetta. Harvey was a man who felt and was very clear what he felt for. He was very clear about it. And personally became a very dear mentor to me, advisor, and together with Yetta, core supporters of what we do on campus. But one of the biggest ideas I saw at Harvey was family. His commitment to Yetta, the commitment of Yetta to Harvey is something we could all learn from. As I heard both the story from Harvey, and I heard it from Yetta, and I read it in the book, how Harvey and Yetta met as teenagers, and then re-met when Yetta was asked to stand up at a wedding of one of her friends that were Harvey's friends. But his commitment to his family grew as his family grew. Their interest became his interest. And I have to tell you, working with college students for many years now, I get to see a lot of family dynamics. And I won't always discuss every dynamic. And I could tell you that there's a very unique thing I always saw with his grandchildren, Max and Stanley. So many times they would walk into Chabad, they're on the phone with Zadie. How many I have parents calling me, telling me, Rabbi, my kid hasn't called me in 3 weeks. Tell them to call me, but don't tell them that I said so. Here I have students that are literally on the phone with their grandparents constantly. Every Friday. I'm just on the phone wishing good Shabbos to Zadie and Bubby. Zadie says hello. But that's not created in a vacuum. That's created by what the grandparents created. Family. Family is important. And naturally, the children and grandchildren come back to family. In one of my many visits with Harvey and Yetta, we were sitting on the back porch of the house here in Keeler, overlooking the golf course, and the book just came out about Harvey and Yetta. And Harvey literally spent, I don't remember how many hours it was, maybe we did 2 hours. He went through the entire book with me, page by page. And I learned about so many things, and I was fascinated, things that he never even spoke about, because I always found that Harvey speaks more about everybody else or about his work than about his history. And it was just fascinating. And the theme, you look throughout, for those that haven't read the book, I know it's a family thing, but I encourage you to ask them to borrow it. There's two main themes that come out through there, is hard work and family. Hard work and family is important. And I want to share a few anecdotes that happened recently that I learned about Harvey. When I was visiting about 7 weeks ago, we went to put up mezuzahs in the new place. I know we discussed that when he put up one, we ended up putting two. Harvey told me he didn't sleep the night before. He was very, very tired. I said, Harvey, why didn't you sleep? He says, every evening I speak to Larry and Sharon, but last night they didn't call. And the whole night I was worried sick. Why didn't they call? I said, Harvey, why didn't you call to find out? He said, I didn't want to bother. But that was Harvey. People, I don't even know how many of us realize how much he really, really was concerned for each and every one. Harvey loved Bonnie. He was deeply connected, and in every conversation I had, he was always in pain from losing Bonnie. And he always spoke to me about ways to remember her. And I remember the first Rosh Hashanah after her passing, it was the first yard site, we were speaking about how I heard from Max how in the parents' house there was always a lot of guests. And she loved people. And Harvey and Yetta said, let's start making Rosh Hashanah dinners. For all the students, Stanley was still a student then, Max was a student then. And eventually it came to Pesach Seders as well, and many other things. He wanted her legacy to continue of welcoming guests in an unlimited fashion. And I say unlimited, he always stressed that to me. And over the past 11 years, thousands and thousands of students experienced Rosh Hashanah and Pesach and many other experiences due to his generosity and his love to Bonnie. And that love and that commitment that Harvey had didn't just wait for me to call. I remember he called me once, it was a couple of years ago, it was in Tucson, maybe in 2018 in December, and he says, Rabbi, you're not calling me? You don't need my help? I said, of course I need your help. She said, why didn't you call me for support this December? So I said, thank you, Harvey, yes. And that was him. He continued that even after the children left Illinois, because he wanted the legacy that he started of Bonnie loving people and helping others continue at University of Illinois. And I vividly remember, and I was looking at the pictures the past few nights of Harvey and Yetta dancing down Green Street when we did a Torah in memory of Bonnie. And I looked at a picture that epitomized Harvey's feeling at that time. On the one hand, he was very serious. At the other hand, he was very joyful. And I think that's how he lived his life and his connection to his dear daughter Bonnie. In pain, but committed to keep her life forward. I remember he called me one day and said, David's eldest, maybe will come to Illinois, I'm not sure. But he is visiting for the weekend. Make sure to say hi. I didn't tell you that before. I'm telling you that now. I think Max was still on campus then, and he brought over his cousin. Unfortunately, he went to Indiana. But he cared. He cared for each of his children and grandchildren in ways beyond that people knew. Because to each and every one of his grandchildren and children, each one of them were like the only one. And he was proud how they worked hard. He was so proud to tell me how everyone started their own businesses, and everyone is so self-made or got their own jobs in their own environments working for this company or creating their own company. It took such a pride for him. When I visited recently, he spent a lot of time telling me how hard things are. He was really not happy about how he was doing. He told me how he was a schmoozer and how he runs around and now he can't move on his own and now he can't even go. He was so sharp. But as soon as he started to speak about the grandkids, it was just as if all the down feeling was gone. Went to the wall, the pictures of all the grandkids, and he's starting to tell me about each one and how proud he is that every one of them is married or dating Jewish, and how he never doesn't know what he did to merit that, and it's just a fluke. And I said, Harvey, it's not a fluke. You and Yetta has given such a love to Judaism, naturally, the seeds that you plant by osmosis is going to grow into great trees. Harvey was a person who was very, very strong-willed. When I met him recently, I think he wanted to get to see me if I'm just really committed to him as and beyond family. He used to ask me to get him clients for the printing press. He brought me into the office and he explained to me how the whole business works. And he said, Rabbi, I want you to print all your stuff by me, and I want you to get all the Chabads to print by me, and I want you to get Chabad International to print by me. And I connected him to different printing people, and that was him. He wasn't scared to say it as it was, and he was so committed to the business until retirement, until the business closed. And I remember when we printed the brochures for the Torah beginning for Bonnie, he was so proud that there was something he printed, and we're using, came straight from Triangle printers. And another big point I learned about Harvey is that he worked really hard for tzedakah. Harvey and Yetta are real role models how to be philanthropic, giving people. Both building the Holocaust Museum here at Illinois, which he reminded me about 7 weeks ago, how he led it and he was very proud of it. Helping with research in cancer care and so much more. Personally, I saw this up close. And I shared this with Harvey on my last visit, that anyone that I know, a lot of my closest friends and partners and pillars in Chabad comes back to the doorpost of the Saltzman family. Him and, by extension, children, grandchildren, children-in-law. And it's thanks to his commitment. And he never stopped. Because during the same conversation that we had, and he was sharing how things were hard a few weeks ago, he brought up we came up the conversation that, Rabbi, what's going on with Chabad? And we had this discussion about this capital campaign that we're launching. And here's a man who's not feeling well, clearly not feeling well. He's not happy about it. And again, he's changed modes. He said, Rabbi, I can't write now so much. I told him, don't worry, I'm going to ask Stanley to train you to do voice to text. He said, Rabbi, this is what you got to do. He starts listing. You got to call this person. You got to call that person. Tell them I told you to call them. Call governor. Tell the governor he's a Jew. He has to support you. Call this. Call that. And I was like, Harvey, you're not feeling well. You literally just gave me a 20-name list of people to call and how to do. And he says, I want you to call me every day. And I realized, actually, it's great because I gave him something to be excited about. I'm like, Harvey, I'm going to call you every day and you're going to give me advice. I'm going to update you on the campaign. I was blown away because he was really, literally not feeling well, but yet he took not only an interest, but asked me and gave me ideas and asked me actually to say that he told me to tell people that he called. But that was Harvey. Sadly, it took a turn for the worse a little bit afterwards. But we know he's going to be involved and be very strong. You ever look at a bridge? How does a strong bridge stand up tall? I grew up in New York, and people think that bridges are very rigid. But if a bridge would be rigid, the bridge would crack. I'm not an engineer, but I'm surrounded by engineers on campus. The bridge can't survive. With firmness, there has to be sway. And that's how I saw Harvey. He had firmness, but he had sway. When it had to be sway, when it had to be compromise, he was there to do it. When it had to be said, he said it as it is. His love to everybody was reflected in his last few months, especially the last few weeks, of the love from everybody to him. I want to tell you, Harvey, personally, you're going to be very missed. Everybody in the room is going to miss you. We're going to miss your smile, miss your candidness, miss your love, your energy, and your care. All your family and friends are all here. We all love you. I know it feels like a dream. It feels so weird. It doesn't feel real. We're just talking, making plans. But now we are here. But I want to tell you, Harvey, that the family commits to continue everything that was dealt to you, building proud Jewish families, emulating everything that you have shown. It's interesting, I was reading through the book that Harvey gave me, and I noticed that he said when his father passed away, he said Kaddish. He went to shul every morning and said Kaddish. He never told me that. I was blown away by it. But the question is, why do we say Kaddish? Why is Kaddish said? If you look at the words of Kaddish, it doesn't mention death. It doesn't mention anything. So why are we saying Kaddish? It speaks about how God is so great. Why are we speaking how God is so great when we're dealing with death? And the reason is because no matter how we feel, we know God has a plan. And God, no matter how rotten it is, and how rotten it was even in the end of Harvey's life, how much pain he was in, we know, God, there's a plan for everybody. And we say Kaddish, recognizing that. Our forefather Jacob, it says in the Talmud that he never died. And the Talmud asks, what does it mean he never died? He was buried, there was a funeral. And the Talmud answers, Ma'azar or b'chayim, afu b'chayim. Just as the descendants are alive, he is alive. Harvey, your descendants are alive. Your descendants, both your biological descendants, and both the thousands that were impacted by your love and care. And I see with the thousands of students that were impacted directly by your love and care, everything that they do is you living on. And we know Harvey is going to live on with each and every one of us. And Yetta, your love, your dedication, your care, as Harvey told me recently, without Yetta, he wouldn't be able to do anything. You are a heroine. You are the matriarch. The family that you built with Harvey will be there for you for many long, good years. If you ever look, as I was speaking with the family yesterday, if you ever look at a caterpillar growing on the ground, a caterpillar goes into a cocoon and it comes out like a butterfly. The caterpillar and the butterfly are the same thing. It's just another expression of the same thing. Life in this world is like the caterpillar. Life after passing is like the butterfly. We know Harvey will still be here. He'll be our butterfly. He'll still be here. His soul is still going to connect. It's just his physical part that would not be with us. And although he would not be here, we are going to better ourselves. And everybody in this room could take a moment to think of a personal relationship that you had with Harvey and think about, not today, not tomorrow, but in a week, 2, 3, a year or two or more, what are you going to do to perpetuate Harvey's legacy? I know we are committed. My children last night were all speaking about Harvey. We all call him Zadie, even though he's just our students, Zadie, but that's how we call them. I know he's going to continue being a Zadie to so many. Going up in heaven, as we say in Yiddish, to be a gute better. He's going to go up in heaven to be a good besitcher on behalf of the family. I know him and Barney up there are going to be praying and doing everything they can for all their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren for long, happy, good years. This time, we're going to hear from Harvey's dear son, David.
Just really want to thank everybody for being here today to honor my dad. It's really means a lot to all of us to be surrounded by such great friends and family. I do want to really acknowledge that Larry and Sharon are not with us today. Larry's been battling a serious illness for a long time and is recovering in California, and we all miss their presence today. So it's only been 2 days since Harvey passed away, and I've already made my first mistake. Harvey was always a great negotiator, and he told me that when he passes away, I need to meet with 5 funeral directors and get 5 bids. Then I should play one against the other to get the best price. Well, Dad, I'm sorry to report that we met with David Jacobson last night. He got me at a bad time, and I accepted his price without question. I didn't even ask him to throw in the coat rack. I always remember the many golf trips that we went on. Pinehurst, Pebble Beach, TPC Sawgrass, Bandon Dunes, and the Alabama Trail. Our trips were sometimes just the 2 of us, and often with Mike Robin, Phil Goldstick, and Jerry Heckman. We enjoyed great camaraderie, and of course, Harvey always pushed me to organize the next trip. I also had the pleasure of seeing Harvey's second career hole-in-one. I have a lot of good friends that are much better players than him that have never done it. My dad was not the greatest golfer, but on the third hole of Antani Canyon with Mike Robin, Harvey hit it 1 shot and right in the hole. Good deal. Most of Harvey's story has been told by different people, but I'd like to touch on a part of his life that I believe most of you are not aware of. His brother Barry was 5 years younger than he was and was born with severe mental retardation. At an early age, Barry was brought to live at Beverly Farms, which is a facility near St. Louis. As a young boy, I remember driving several hours with my mom and dad to visit Barry. Barry could not talk at all and had a hard time feeding himself. But he liked ice cream, and we would always go out to bring him to an ice cream parlor. Although there really was no communication with Barry, my dad continued to drive down to Beverly Farms several times a year to make sure things were okay. Barry passed away over 15 years ago. What stands out in my mind was that Harvey arranged to have a proper funeral for him, even though so few people knew of his situation. We had a graveside service at West Lawn. I remember being the rabbi there, my mom, Earl Dan, and Eli Field. It was very small but very peaceful and showed the type of character that Harvey had. My mom and dad enjoyed trips around the world. He was an avid photographer and, of course, enjoyed meeting new people at any time he could. Whenever he returned, he would always say he had a great trip, but being back in the United States was always better. My dad's interest in people was genuine and sincere. He loved talking to anybody he could and learning more about them. At Triangle, my dad and mom did a tremendous amount of entertaining of clients. He would learn everything about them, family, kids, hobbies. The goal was not to get more business, just to get to know people better. Uber was a great discovery for Harvey. Of course, it really wasn't about getting a ride. He realized every time he clicked on his phone, he had an opportunity to meet someone new and take an interest in them. My dad's love of his grandchildren was very, very special. Being in Sacramento for Passover with Philip and Jennifer, watching Isaac, Max, and Stanley at wrestling meets, or spending time in Tucson with Michael and Jeffrey was very special to him. When Michael was born, 6 weeks prematurely, I called Mom and Dad to tell them the exciting news. Turns out they were in Las Vegas, and Harvey just had been rolling for an hour in the craps table and won $2,000. When Carly was born, I convinced my mom to change her license plates from Bubby times 7 to Bubby times 8. I'm now working on getting her to change it to Bubby times 21, but she keeps telling me we just keep having more babies. So. Carly was with Zadie almost every night in the last days of his life. She comforted him and told him how much she loved him. I know that he was listening. So my dad had a great line in sales: make one more call. It means that at 5 o'clock, instead of heading home, call one more prospect. He knew the only guy left in the office was the owner, and he would answer the phone. I've done it myself, and it really works. So tonight, if you're in business, or tomorrow, if you're in business, make one more call. Call a friend you haven't seen in a long time. Ask them how they're doing. Give your children an extra hug tonight before bedtime, or just tell someone you love them. Dad, thanks for everything you've done for me.
Their grandson Max.
In Pirkei Avot, the ethical teachings of the Mishnah, we learn, Ben Zoma said, "Who is wise? One who learns from every person." Zadie was wise. He lived this every day. He had a way of making natural conversations with anyone he met, learning about them and learning from them. He was able to connect to anyone at their own level, whether it was his 4-year-old great-granddaughter or a 40-year-old stranger on the golf course. Jewish traditions were very important to Zadie. We remember when we were younger that Bubby and Zadie would host the Passover Seder. They had to move the couches and extend the table all the way into the living room to accommodate the 20-plus extended family members, with Zadie seated at the head of the table. He enjoyed watching his grandchildren sing the 4 questions, and he rewarded us for finding the afikoman with a magic dollar. Each Sunday, he called every single one of his grandkids. And while he always wanted to hear about our lives, he also asked our opinions on things like the stock market, on politics, or whatever else might have been on his mind. He always made us feel special with individual attention, and each one of us felt very close in a very unique relationship. And we see that it was not just us that had those feelings, but everybody. You can see this because he had grandkids that would drop everything they were doing and fly across the country to see him in the hospital, and also have a friend Bob, who they've been friends for longer than most people's life expectancy, who would come visit him in the hospital. Zaid taught us about commitment, about planning, and about being intentional and investing for the future. My brother Stanley shared that at every stage of his life, Zaid would push him to work hard and always be better. Even though Zadie only spent 2 nights of his life in college, he always made sure that we would follow through with a college degree and to follow our passions in our professional life. Every time Zadie had a really good piece of wisdom, he would tell us that's what he learned on his 2nd night of college. For Stanley, who recently started his own career path as a financial planner, he always encouraged him to just make one more call. Stanley said the biggest lesson he learned from Zadie in his life is to don't focus on the short term, because one day you're going to be able to look back, just like I do, and see, how do I get here? He sees his grandkids and says, how do I get so lucky? Zadie taught us about the importance of giving charity, giving tzedakah, and he was exceedingly generous. As Isaac remembered, his advice was to pick a cause, make sure you care about it, and start with something small. And then, every year, try to give a little more. Many years ago, Zay would give each one of his grandkids money to invest. And he made it a challenge for us. We couldn't use the money. We would pick a stock, and it would be a challenge between the grandkids to see whose stock performed the best at the end of the year. More valuable than the gift of the money that he was giving to us was teaching us about investing in the future and looking at the long term. I have chosen a career path in the nonprofit sector, and Zadie has been supportive of me every step of the way. Not only with his sound advice, careful listening, and financial support, but also with his time and connections. A few years ago, I was involved with a charitable golf outing. Even though Zadie was already not playing golf at the time, he and Bubby sponsored a hole. He also came out to the golf course and sat as a volunteer at one of the hole-in-one contests to be a witness. And he brought with him a camera to take some pictures of the players. And more than just being a witness, he was there interacting with everybody that came by, making sure they had a good time, and sharing with them some of his infamous jokes. Later, for the same organization, when I needed to print invitations, Zadie made sure that not only did I have quality invitations printed, but that I got a discount, even though I already sold the company. Zadie was integral in fundraising for and establishing the now 10-year-old Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center. He recruited me to get involved when they were establishing a young professional committee, and he showed me not what I could do for the organization, but also what I could benefit from being involved with it. At one of the dinners for the museum, that he and Bubby would always sponsor a table and fill it with guests, I had a chance to speak to the now Governor J.B. Pritzker, who Zadie worked with to establish the museum. When I mentioned that I was Harvey Saltzman's grandson, he told me that he loves Harvey, and that of the 2 pictures he has on his desk, there's a picture of him and Zadie. When I would ask for advice on certain things going on and talk about some of the difficulties I was having, he always listened carefully, making sure he heard and wanted to know if there was anything else. He would always reply with wisdom. On one occasion, he would encourage me by saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Yet on another occasion, when I'd be venting, he would say, you know what, Max? Sometimes a good general knows when to retreat. You could always count on Zadie to be honest in his conversations with you and in his feedback. When Stanley decided to go off and join the Israeli army, he would be very blunt, and he said, your mother would not approve of this decision. When I was younger, and I would look to meet with certain people and getting started in my career, even before that, even if you had no reason to know who the person was, he would look at me and say, if you need to, tell him you're Harvey Saltzman's grandson. Having recently started in a new role, I've been meeting with a lot of new people, and a lot of them know Zadie from their professional lives. I'm amazed at how impactful and how far-reaching he was on so many people. I'm blessed to have had him as a role model, and we always be proud to tell people I'm Harvey Saltzman's grandson.
Philip and Jennifer, on behalf of Larry.
Hi, I'm Phil, and this is my sister Jen. We're children of Larry, and this remembrance is written by our dad, delivered by us. Due to complications from my dad's leukemia therapy, he's not allowed to travel at this time, so we're here to say it on his behalf.
So on behalf of our family, thank you for honoring Harvey or Zadie with your attendance here at his memorial service. Given that you have chosen to take this valuable time out of your day, it's really humbling, and as if there was one consistent view that my father believed in, and this is all coming from my dad, our dad, is that he actually hated funerals, and he thought there really was no purpose in them. He confided in my dad that if he could figure out how to bypass this tried and true event, it would make him really happy. Alas, we couldn't grant that request to him. And as my dad follows the Star Trek mantra that at times we must honor the good and the many over the good of the one. Of course, you all in attendance are the many, and in this instance, it is much more important to give you a chance for reflection and closure. However, what I can do is make my reflection on the shorter side, and in thinking of how to describe a person's life, I want to distill my dad's life into 2 words. One word is relentless. If Harvey wanted something, he would just go out and get it. He was the salesman's salesman, the ultimate selling ice to an Eskimo kind of guy. And if he wanted something personal for his family, he would make it happen. This included financial support. He was always open to financial discussions. The second word is supportive. This word may be in contradiction to relentless, as one would denote anger in achieving a goal, and the other delivering whatever he could to support a problem in the family. Harvey loved his family and would do just about anything to right a wrong or provide financial support for education. As a person who was able to attend 2 days of college, he learned the value of knowledge and made sure he could pay it forward to his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. He was a great role model for our children and for me. And again, this is my dad speaking. I could go on, and I promise to keep this short. As they visited Sacramento many times, our friends here adore him for his personality and are saddened by his passing. He was the roll the net king on Passover. Again, we thank you for honoring him today. We grieve over one blessed soul, and I, for one, will have a hard time coping with our loss. Thank you for your support and caring.
I just things. So, also like to just add a couple things quickly, listening to everybody talk today. Themes everybody's talking about: family. When Leah and I, my wife Leah, were first dating, and Bubby and Zadie came to visit us to see how we were doing and meet us, we sat down at a restaurant, and my wife, very in her full Southern politeness, went and said, Mr. Saltzman, good to meet you. Zadie just took one look at her and said, Leah, call me Zadie. That was it. That was welcome to the family instantly. Second thing is, I know if he were able to ask me one question right now, it would be, who printed this? He would want to know everything about it, and not, and it's part of, as Rabbi David said so eloquently, it was about hard work, but really it was more about passion, because he wouldn't just be wanting to get a sale, he'd be talking about his new digital press and how he could customize it and do 4-color and all these different things, and it's that passion, I think, that was one of his greatest lessons, and so just wanted to share that. Thank you.
I'll ask a friend, Bruce Everlegs.
I'll make this somewhat brief. Reflecting on Harvey's life, it truly is a rags to riches story, with a lot of highs, a few lows, and many jokes in between. Harvey, like Yetta, my mother and father, and all those who grew up on the West Side, were part of a transition from the old country to the new. From humble beginnings, he exemplified what hard work and determination could lead to. Starting at a shared desk, not a shared office, but a shared desk, he built a tremendous business that allowed him to live in a picturesque home on a golf course that he wouldn't want to join, trips around the world, and as David and I would say, wonderful affairs. Sometimes they were kosher affairs, sometimes they weren't, but they were always nice affairs nonetheless. Harvey did not always have it easy. He started with nothing. He was left to care for his brother. He slid in the valley with trauma of losing Bonnie and had reservations about the fate of Triangle, but it never stopped him from moving ahead and always wanting to go, see, and do. I can't count the number of times I would call my mom up and ask what she was doing. She would say, I'm going with Harvey and Yetta to the theater. I'm going to a show with Harvey and Yetta. I'm going to Tucson for a couple of weeks with Harvey and Yetta. My mom would say Harvey never wanted to get old. He always wanted to do something and get the most out of life. He really did live life to the fullest. Now I got to tell you, I'm in a little bit of trouble. You see, every year I go to a conference with my wife. They always have a dinner, and then after dinner, they all turn to me to tell jokes, which might tell you how boring they are, because I'm not really the one to make them laugh. Unfortunately, I am really bad with jokes, but I could always remember a few from Harvey. They would think I was the funniest person around, but it really wasn't me, it was really Harvey. I'm lucky that a few months ago he told me one that was really funny, and I'm going to dedicate it to him next October. When you look back on someone's life, you have to see if they checked all the boxes. Harvey was a wonderful husband, a loving father, a good friend, a generous benefactor, and a great joke teller. So what more could you ask for? Leave this here.
Does anyone want to speak last minute? Anyone decide to speak? We're going to conclude today's service, but before we do that, it's important. I think Harvey would want that energy here. I have to say, when I walked into the family room before the funeral, I said you could see this is Harvey had a fear because there was like an energy in the room. Usually very somber and everyone's very serious, but there's family, there's kids. It's like, that's the beauty of family and the beauty of Harvey. So it's important that we take whatever we learned about today and heard about today and take it to heart. The living shall take to heart and commit to keep those ideas alive within each and every one of us. We're going to conclude today's service with a Kel Malei Rachamim. We ask God at this time, as Harvey is on his journey, his physical time in this world has come to an end. His soul, his spirit will live on forever. But as he is on this journey, to please accept him and bring him comfort and comfort to all. Please rise. El malei rachamim, sheichem emroimim, hamtzei menucha nechoina kanfei hashachina, b'malois kedoshim utahirim, kezayar harakia mazhirim, es nishmas Chaim Hirsch ben Dovber, shehalach la'olamo, ba'avur she'anachnu mispalim ba'ad askaras nishmasa, Began Eden tehei menuchasai lechem bal harachim yastideyu b'seisa knafef leilamim v'yitzror b'tzror hachayim es nishmasa Adonai hu nachalasa v'yanuach b'shalom ha'mishkava v'narmar Amen. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant proper repose on the sheltering wings of your presence in the lofty levels of the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament onto the soul of Chaim Hirsch ben Dover, Harvey Saltzman, who has gone to his world, and whose memory we pray. May he repose, be in paradise. May the Master of Compassion bring him under the cover of God's wings and bind his soul in the bond of life. May the Lord be his heritage, and may he repose in his resting place in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at West Lawn Cemetery located at 7801 West Montrose in Norridge. The family will be together at the Saltzman residence at 2528 Walters Avenue in Northbrook. They'll be together today following the interment till 9 p.m. and Wednesday from 2 to 5 and 6 to 9. That information is on the service folder, as well as memorial contributions to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society or the City of Hope. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing many of the cars with a flag that will be affixed to the top portion of your car. We'll have a car in the back of the funeral procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. And for your own personal safety, I strongly recommend using your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections, and please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to a cemetery. The following people have been asked to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, please stand next to Harvey's casket. Michael Saltzman, Jeffrey Saltzman, Isaac Dayan, Max Dayan, Stanley Dayan, Philip Saltzman, Mitch Dayan, Russell Phillips, and Jerry Fagan. At this time, I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place as we escort the casket of Mr. Harvey Saltzman, along with Rabbi David Taktil and the entire Saltzman family from the chapel. Then you may return to your cars.